Let's see here. So this guy, Mr. Cherno, accidentally implemented hot code reloading in C++. Let's see what he has to say about it.
This feature came about as an unintended consequence of thumbnails. This reloads live now. But is that a good thing? What I want to do today is I actually want to talk to you guys because I've had meetings about the new thumbnail stuff that I've been doing, and I've kind of come up with this new thing called thumbnail-driven development. I was showing you guys that we have a somewhat unintentional side effect where if we have
when he says thumbnails, he means those pictures here. Aha.
Like our blue material, and let's just say I have a sphere, and the sphere is this blue material, which is obviously not blue at the moment, but we have a blue material, cool. If I open this up externally, so I've got it here in VS Code, and I edit it, right? So I change this to like 1, hit Control S, you can see instant changes. Thumbnails changed, and the thing in the scene is changed, right? And it's kind of like, oh.
Yeah, but that's just the file. It's, what is that? Blue.h material. It's just a hot reloading a file.
Cool, you know, Hazel has hot reloading. That's not like, you know, huge news, but it's nice. It's definitely nice to have, and it's especially very, very snappy because it's Hazel. Hazel's quite fast, which is cool. The reason this is hot reloading.
It's reloading a fucking file, bro. Man, reloading a file. I'm not toxic, okay? I'm just saying that reloading a file is literally, right? That's the same as shader reloading. Okay,
Believe
bro?
it or not, is because of the thumbnails. And that's why I call it thumbnail-driven development. Because this feature wouldn't actually be in Hazel if it wasn't a completely unintentional side effect from us trying to implement a thumbnail system. Let me demonstrate. If I back out of this directory so that we no longer see the thumbnail, and I change this, nothing. It's red now. No. It's...
Why doesn't it change? That's a bug. That's a bug. Okay, so he's fixing the bug.
It's emissive now.
Let him cook.
No, it's not. Until I step back into this directory. Ready? There it is. Isn't that wild? Why? Why is this happening? Well, because this is how it works. So when we render all of these thumbnails over here, yeah, we go through them and we have to ask ourselves whether or not the thumbnail is an accurate representation of the content on disk, right? So you have a file on disk, it's this, yeah? Does this thumbnail represent that file on disk accurately? How do we tell? Well, we can look at the date modified basically. So the timestamp, the last.
That works. But not all the time. Like, some editors don't write the stupid date. They don't write that. So you have to use a directory watcher. Sometimes. Not all the time. But I had to do it in hot shader reloading, if I remember correctly. At least in... While I was using 4Coda. 4Coda wasn't changing the date properly. Better to have a watch on the directory, yeah. But again, like, it does work. It does work. Just sometimes it doesn't if you use some special editor.
When the thumbnail was generated, it retains kind of what timestamp that file had. And then we compare it to the current file on disk. And if they're different, then the file is different. Like the thumbnail is, it could have been the same file, but it's probably been changed, right? It's modified. It's got a different date and time. So what do? We have to regenerate the thumbnail because we want the most accurate. Okay,
so I know. I just want to say what I would do. I would keep a list of all of the materials in, let's say, an array. This doesn't seem like a lot of data. How is this? 1, 4, 5, 6. Let's say this is a float to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 floats. An array with 12 floats. That's what I would do.
Representation. So how do we do that? Well,
and then I just keep that in my memory, and then whenever something changes, I just update the data in the memory, and then it is always, even if I don't draw these thumbnails, it will always draw me this. I don't understand, but okay, we'll let him cook.
This material.
Let him
we have
cook,
to load the material, obviously. We have to load the material into the asset manager so that we can create this image with that material. But did you just say load the material into the asset manager? But the asset manager is responsible for all the assets. Therefore, it's responsible for the assets that we see in the viewport as well, right? So what's
this is OOP. Okay, we'll have to, like, the asset manager, you ask the asset manager for a material, and then it gives you a material. So I guess it's not okay.
Because we tried.
Do you have 128 gigs of RAM? Are you stupid? Let's say you have 1,000 materials. Even then, like, let's make the, you can look, listen, okay, bro. Take out a calculator. Let's say how many floats was this? 8 floats times 32 bits. This is how many bits one of them has, right? Then times 1,000. That is how many bits an array of 1,000 of those materials will have in your memory when you start the application. And then we divide that by 8. Okay, so that's gotta be a couple of kilobytes. 32 kilobytes. 1K textures. They are easily over 4 megabytes. Uncompressed. Uncompressed. Okay? Not compressed. Uncompressed. Just to let you know. So you're not wasting space when you just keep this in memory. The amount of data that is required for other things is just way outweighs this type of stuff.
Regenerate the thumbnail to make it the most up-to-date representation of this physical file on disk. It caused an asset reload in the whole engine, and it gave us this. I mean, this is weird. It's cool. Like, it's really cool, right? Because again, we can completely 100% lean into the fact that Hazel can reload assets this fast, because no other engine, as far as I'm aware, can reload assets.
It's a fucking file reloading, man. Okay, but commercial engine.
This fast.
Sorry.
Right? Just by modifying this, you just change everything immediately. Like, this seems amazing. And again, like, you know, if we open up Fork, and we look at, like, you know, this, and here it is over here, and blue, right? If I revert this file, hey, it's back to what it was, right? So picture this. You're working with an artist. You're playing your game.
He reverted this file. Oh, it's Git. Is it Git? Okay, was Git, right? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah? They update some 3D models or change some textures. You pull their latest commit live while playing the game. It uploads like that. That's cool. And that's the Hazel Advantage, right? So we lean into that because that's what we want to do. We want this to be nice.
I feel like I'm watching an ad right now. Guys, you want to buy Hazel yet?
Right? We want this to be cool. We want to take advantage of the fact that because Hazel is simple and not bloated and crazy, yeah, we can do this that quickly. Now, if you guys are trying to learn programming and math, listen up, I got something for you. Brilliant.org, the sponsor of this video, that you can try out for free for 30 days. Brilliant.org is an amazing website filled with lots and lots of really high quality courses on various STEM topics. Recently, they've been expanding on their programming courses. They're really good for beginners to learn how to think like a programmer. They'll help you learn essential coding elements like for loops and conditionals in like a fun visual way. And they even have these Python courses where you'll actually start building programs. But then they also have this huge library of really good math courses, which I think is super important if you're trying to learn programming, and especially if you want to make game engines like Hazel. And the reason why I love Brilliant specifically is because
it depends on how you use materials. If you have one material with 4 textures per material, it can quickly add up. But if you go with the road of PBR and layering like in Cyberpunk, you will have 250 plus base materials that you can then mix using text files. Can you explain to me the act of mixing materials? That would be interesting to understand. Because for me, when you have a draw operation using a texture, you apply one material to it. Maybe I'm wrong there. Basically what you do is you have a mask which tells you how each layer should be blended with the next one. Obviously I'm skipping a lot of steps, but that's the oversimplified version. So let's say you have a list of materials on a texture, right? 5 materials layered on top of each other. The first one in the list is applied first. And then I guess you have a mask. If you don't have a mask, it's completely white. Then the entire material is applied on top, overwriting the previous material, I would assume. Just like it works in Photoshop, right? I still don't see how you need to duplicate materials. You just need to reference them by some sort of ID. You get the material based on the data and or an ID. I don't see how you need to duplicate that. You just have to have the data somewhere in place and then just read the data from the list. That is just a list of materials. And then you apply that. And if you want to send that to the GPU, then you just mirror the data that you have on the CPU on the GPU. I don't know, maybe it sounds too easy to me. I was gonna try Brilliant once, but you cannot subscribe on a monthly basis. You have to subscribe for the whole year, $9 yen euros a month, but you have to pay for the whole year. What a scam. It's designed that way that you forget it, yeah. You have to, what I do when I do these things, I put a reminder on my phone, like 5 times, on 5 different dates, before it expires. That's how I get out of these things. The moment I sign up, at the same time, I do these dates. That's how you could potentially get out of one of those itchy situations, right? You remind yourself multiple times before then. Because if you remind yourself one time, maybe you're busy, you can't do it. But if you have multiple and then you have multiple repeats, 1 week, 2 weeks before, that could work.
Super visual, engaging, interactive. They have these widgets you can play with, and they'll quiz you every step of the way to make sure that you're actually learning and retaining the information. And guess what? You can try everything the Brilliant has to offer for free for 30 days. Just go to brilliant.org/channel, link will be in the description below, and that link will also get you 20% off an annual premium subscription. Huge thank you as always to Brilliant.org for sponsoring this video. I really like this, and I think it's really cool. And so what I want to do is obviously take advantage of this. Now, why is this currently unacceptable? Because again, the thumbnail system drives this whole thing. Yeah, indicated by the fact that I can back out of this.
It's a bug,
and I can do whatever I want with this. Yeah,
but it doesn't show you.
Until I go back in, it's not going to change. That's weird. The other thing that we were thinking about was the asset manager, right? And I'll probably make a video about Hazel's weird asset manager. But in general, like, it was weird that, you know, most engines, you import assets. Like, you have to physically drag the asset into the engine, and then it will import it. Like an Unreal Engine will make a U asset out of your mesh or whatever, or out of any asset, I guess. And then that lets you pick your import settings, all your metadata, all of everything, right? And then the U asset will retain a path to the original source asset it was kind of created from as well in the metadata, whatever, right? And then every time you change the original file, it has to kind of do a re-import into that U asset, or you do a manual re-import, whatever. It's going to have to regenerate that U asset file because the file that it is using inside the engine that you imported is not the same as the file you're editing as an intermediate format, which to me has always been weird because it's like, well, you're in the editor, bro. This isn't a shipped game. So why are you in a custom format already? Why aren't you just leaning on the fact that this is intermediate? What we see here, this editor, this is intermediate. This is not final published stuff, right? And like, you know, there's lots of reasons to transition to like a runtime format in the editor. I'm not saying it's bad design. I'm just saying that there's a good point that maybe
would be cool if he explains how these materials are mixed and merged together. But I guess he did that in another video. I'm pretty sure he did, right?
It is in fact the intermediate design level kind of part of this. So why not just retain the fact that we have an FBX file or a GLTR file because that is our intermediate format and we use that and we want to maintain that reference, that link, because that we're currently working on the game. That's why we're in the editor. So clearly we expect these files to be updated and changed. The way that Hazel works is that you don't ever import anything. Yeah, if like, check this out. Yeah, here are my meshes. Let me make a new folder here. I'll call this stream. I'll copy avocado.gltf. I'm gonna show this in Explorer. This is this, right? I'm gonna paste it in here. I'm just gonna refresh this view. Yeah, here's my avocado. This, yeah, I didn't import this. I simply placed this into a directory. Yeah, that is part of the assets directory. And I did have to hit this refresh button because we've disabled automatic file watching and stuff like that, just because it tends to cause problems and I don't really like it. Yeah, so we have to press the refresh button manually, or we can just restart the editor, obviously. If we dump a bunch of assets here and then start up Hazel or load the project, then obviously it will find the fact that there are new assets. Yeah, so that happens automatically. So then how do you use this 3D model though? Because here's the problem though. When you go down this route into the scene and you don't have like this whole like, I'm dragging my file into Hazel now, yeah, so give me like my import options, then what happens is that you have no way to specify certain import things, right? Like for example, does this have a skeleton? Like, do I want animations imported with this? What kind of submeshes do I want to use from this? What about materials? What about whatever? Yeah, but here's the thing, even though this is here and you see this here, you can't use this. If you want to use this, and you can try use this, yeah, but you can't use a mesh source directly. You need to make either, and I've talked about this before in Hazel's new mesh system, I made a video called something like that. It's like a devlog from 2 or 3 years ago. There are two types of meshes. There's a static mesh and there's a dynamic mesh. And so when I try and use this in the scene by dragging it in, hey, look, that looks like an import dialog, doesn't it? And then what I can do is I can pick static dynamic mesh. Let's go with static because it's not going to move and I don't want to replicate the hierarchy within this mesh as entities, right? So I'll pick a static mesh. I can pick a path for it. Sure, I'll just leave it in assets meshes, whatever. You can see it's going to be a .hs mesh, Hazel static mesh, right? I can generate colliders for it. I can do whatever. There's no skeleton. I'm not going to create an animation graph or whatever. Yeah, there's my mesh. I hit create. Now it's in the scene. There's my avocado. I love that I picked an avocado because I'm a big fan. And so what has it actually done? Well, let me go back here and I'll search for avocado. So here's my two avocados. I've searched for it. I've searched for avo. Yeah, that's why they're both here. One is a mesh source. One is a static mesh. So what is a static mesh then? Because it looks a lot like the mesh source. Well, if you open it externally.
Those of you who have worked with 3D models and stuff, like... Why do we differentiate between the two?
Which just lets us open it in an external program, not inside Hazelnut. It's going to open in VS Code because it's just a YAML file, and this is what it has. It's got metadata associated with that. Because instead of us basically being like, okay, because in a way, this is how the other engines seem to do it, right? You basically have your original, let's just say GLTF file. And then from there, it's kind of like, okay, well, this GLTF file gets imported, right? So what happens when we import?
You read the data.
Is we basically take the actual mesh data. So this has all of the vertices and let's just say mesh.
The mesh data is in a
we take
block
all of this
memory.
Mesh data and we basically copy across and we've created, let's just say a U asset file. Yeah?
A U asset or whatever asset you want to create.
Metadata and our real data, which is in green. We have our metadata, we have our real data. So that's kind of been copied across, and that's it. And we don't have the link to that. We still know in the metadata what file it was created from or whatever. It's still kind of within this UAsset, self-sufficient, whatever, right? Whereas Hazel says, okay, well, why have this data here and here? Yeah, let's not do this. Instead, in Hazel.hmesh or hsmesh,
well, I'm pretty sure they just referenced
the entire hsmesh. Yeah, and this doesn't exist. Why?
Yeah, because they referenced the mesh data.
Just simply links to here. That's it.
But this is, shouldn't this be like obvious? Like, like unless you need to have this on the GPU, it's not. Like, let's say you load a texture from a file into your graphical engine, right? Let's say a texture atlas. Why would you store the texture atlas in your memory, in your application on the CPU? The only way, you only need to load it once, you upload it to the GPU, and then you forget about it because you don't need it on the CPU and you're not reading data there. It's not obvious because the GLTF is not great for packing into assets. I know GLTF is annoying. Yeah, it's a giant JSON file that consists of many different things, and I have once written a GLTF loader. Yeah. It's really annoying to deal with, but it works. It has binary data in there. You just need to find the binary data. You need to know how to read the JSON file, which doesn't take long. So, I don't know. The binary data is there. You just need to go through a couple of IDs, find the starting point, whatever. Okay.
Hazel mesh is explained. Like for this Avo, yeah, I created a static mesh out of it.
There's your GLB binary.
So
it depends. Like, sometimes it's within the file, but yeah.
300 avocados if you want, and have them all have different metadata, still linking to that
not
single
within,
data source, basically that single mesh source that has your actual vertex data and material data and whatever else. The moral of this is, I guess, to just say that, like, yeah, I don't think I'll be changing Hazel's asset manager. I think I had a chat to the team, had a chat to a few people on the team. Like, we decided that, like, yeah, it's pretty cool that Hazel works like this, meaning that everything is automatically imported in the assets directory. The asset registry is a reflection of that. Let's just say you do have an asset there that you don't use, or maybe you just, because a good example is, like, I just downloaded, like, a 3D model pack or an asset pack. Yeah. Like Kenny released an asset pack. Let me just grab all of that. I don't think I'll use all of it, but like, I want to see it all in Hazel. Easy. You just import it all into Hazel. And how do you import it into Hazel? You just dump it in your assets directory. It's there now. And so you might be like, okay, well, isn't that a bit wasteful because I didn't want to import all of those, right?
Then you just delete them from the directory.
Created, apart from, I guess, cached thumbnails, the asset registry, which is a thing on disk, yeah, inside your assets directory. Here it is, asset registry. This asset registry, it's this text file which contains every single asset. It's the registry, right? So it's the registry of all the assets that you have in your project. It creates this automatically from everything that you have in your assets directory, yeah? So it's all here. And it's got an asset handle, it's got an asset type, it's got a file path, whatever. So if you do in fact have unused assets, what's the consequence? 3 lines of text in a file that does not get shipped, and of course the asset's not going to be packaged if it's not in use, because Hazel only packages for shipping assets that are actively used. So there's no real consequence of automatically importing assets. The only consequence is a benefit, and that is the fact that it's ready to use in Hazel.
It's like I've done this too. Like this is, I think this is the best way to do it. What he's describing right now is basically your application is a representation of what you have on disk at all times. Whether you do that with a timestamp or with a directory watcher, it doesn't matter. Or on startup, you start up your game, or let's say engine, and then you just look at the folder and see what's in there. I've done that for my level files. Let's say I wanna edit a level file. I just get a list of all the files in the assets levels, and then I can see a right now representation. This has already been done in Warcraft 3. Now you just apply that to engines. I don't think this is anything like special or new. Maybe just people have developed some sort of construct that they want to have at all times, some sort of list. But like you already have this in Warcraft 3. How of you have played custom maps? All you do is put the custom map in the folder and then it's there. It's basically the same thing. And then you load the data from the file and you see the thumbnail and everything.
We don't have to waste time rewriting a system that turns out is actually, we think, is better than the alternative that we were going to rewrite it to. And so then we come up to this whole live reloading thing, yeah? This feature came about as an unintended consequence of thumbnails. Yeah,
It's just
so this
gonna be
wasn't
free?
planned. I just noticed that, oh, hey, this reloads live now. And it didn't used to. I was just thinking about this and I was like, okay, well, why do we have this situation where assets on disk differ from assets in memory? Like, why is that ever a thing or a good thing? Wouldn't it be cool if what you saw in the viewport in Hazel was always 100% up-to-date reflection of the physical assets on the file system? When would you ever not want them to be in sync? And then, like, again, I was thinking about scenarios of this and I'm like, well, that sounds great. Yeah, that sounds great. Because if I have a scene and I'm looking at a scene, let's just say I'm doing a playthrough, I'm doing a playtest of my game, I'm playing the game, yeah? And then like my artist commits a whole bunch of changes to some textures or some models. Yeah?
Because models are compressed on disk.
I could keep playing my game here or whatever
I
on like
see.
one monitor, and then I could...
There's one person saying because models are compressed on disk, and I guess if you change the disk, you might have to uncompress them, which could take a lot of time. I see.
just open up fork, or like, you know, my git client, I'll just do a git pull basically.
You couldn't see it was
while the
behind
game's running, and it would just update like that. Because the files changed on disk, and that is a reflection of the files as they are. Like the most up-to-date version of the files is what you see in the viewport. Because Hazel is always aware of like the file on disk. Do I have that version? And I was thinking about like, okay, well, sure. I mean, that sounds
This is on
good.
stream,
like,
guys. This is
what's
live.
the downside?
He
And then I
doesn't
started
have
thinking, okay, well, people
a way to
sometimes
retake
like
it.
have a little bit
It's
of a
just
phobia
normal.
of disks, right? Because, you know, hard drives used to be slow. I mean, we're in 2024 now. Basically everyone has an SSD. I mean, look at some of the stuff that
You
like the
guys.
PlayStation 5 is doing. Like they were like, you know, in that tech demo or whatever, they because of their blazing fast like decompression chip and SSD and whatever, you know, they were able to just like basically frost and cull assets off of memory and into disk, like, and just load it on demand as the frame gets rendered or whatever, because it's like that, because it's so fast, especially if it's like a runtime format, which is wouldn't be it. But sure, you know, and then obviously we have like Windows 11 and we have DirectX 12, which has that direct storage or whatever thing that can load straight from disk to GPU memory. Like the future seems to be just, you know, that coupled with the fact that SSDs are getting faster and faster. I've got an M2 SSD here that's really fast. We're kind of trending towards the fact that like disks, RAM, you know, it's beginning to blur. It's beginning to kind of, I mean, you know, RAM's still faster, but like it's, you know, it's a lot closer than it used to be back in the day. So then what would be the big deal with loading all these assets all the time? And making sure that we have like up-to-date versions, because again, guys, like again, sure, you do a git pull, that's going to be a bit slow while it's pulling. Like I think that's okay, right? You're doing a git pull, you're not doing that every frame, I hope, right? Or you edit a material or a 3D mesh. That's one single 3D mesh that you just re-exported, and you want it to change like that for like what? For a few frames while it loads it? Oh no, a stutter during development. Like that's not an issue. That's why like I really feel like what I want to do going forward is Hazel should just always have the latest asset up to date so that it works like I was just showing you guys. You change the asset.
Yeah,
it
you gotta
updates
fix that
instantly.
bug,
You
bro.
got your little pink objects or whatever.
Still
you
a
want them
bug.
to be back to blue or whatever. You just save the file, it's done. Yeah, because the files are what you see in a way. Like it's almost like, yeah, it has to store stuff in memory because that's how we get it to the GPU, unless we're using the direct storage thing or whatever, but like that's how we get it to the GPU, and the GPU needs it in
Not
memory.
reloading,
because, yes,
this
it
is
would, in fact, need to slow
revolutionary.
just read
I knew
what
this
you need
was
from
gonna
disk
come
every
from
single,
TK.
you know, cycle of the fragment shader or whatever if you're reading a texture, right?
Yeah.
You still need to store stuff in memory because it's
I
still
guess
faster.
we are not impressed
But
because we have been
anytime something
using
changes on
this since
disk,
day one.
we get it
Yeah,
to memory instantly. It's just all live, baby. You are seeing the files you are editing.
I thought
What
it
you
was
see is
hot
what you
code
get.
reloading.
WYSIWYG. I just invented an acronym, and I want to stress this is the editor. Yeah, you're not playing a game. This isn't going to ruin your gameplay experience.
You
This
still
is
gotta fix the bug,
development.
okay,
This is
Mr.
editing.
Cherno?
This is just how the editor works.
Yeah?
I just like the fact that, again, I like the fact that this accidentally came about because of the thumbnails, man. Like, that's cool. And
You
now
wouldn't
it's like
even
we
know
have
about it
we
without
almost have a new
Casey?
design philosophy for Hazel. Cool. All right.
Does
Thank you
that
guys for
matter?
watching. Hope you enjoyed
Where you
the
get
stream.
your ideas from? Does that really matter? Where you get your ideas from? Or does it matter whether you adopt some good principles?